welcome to The Sinner and the Saint. I'm Melissa Bell.
And I'm Allison Kane. Today, we're calling this one, Keep Your Hands Out of My Punchbowl.
Keep your hands out of my punch bowl. Do they even have punch bowls anymore?
Okay, this is hysterical. Our daughter came back from a function and she said, Mom, there was the weirdest thing today. There were these fountains with this like green punch stuff. And it was like flowing down and we were supposed to drink it. And I was like, yeah, that's like punch. She was like, no. There was like, I think it has like some sort of sherbet. And I'm like, yeah, like sherbet and Sprite and whatever. She's like, how do you even know that? It's so weird. I was like, girl, this is like the standard for all country church weddings, socials, homecomings, all the things. She's like, what? How is that even a thing? It was so funny.
I just think like they used to dip their glasses into the punch bowl.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, this was, she was so offended by it. She said they had 3 fountains there. Like we were going to drink at that? What? I mean, it was just so offensive. It was really cute. And I said, well, a lot of times it's just for decoration.
Oh.
And it's a pretty non-alcoholic. Or maybe
it depends on where she was at.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, you could drink it, but I guess I never drank that stuff. So to me, it always was a decoration.
Well, yeah, I don't think I would put my cup in that. Gross.
Even if they ladle it out, it's just not my thing.
Right.
I don't eat fried Oreos either, though, people.
Have you ever had a drink out of a punch bowl? That's a question, friends.
Yes.
Huh. I mean, if you're probably under the age of 30, you have no idea what we're talking about, right?
Exactly. That's why it was so hysterical.
Gosh.
I mean, and she was just mystified that I knew exactly what she was talking about. She thought she was coming to tell me some really cool secret thing.
I just feel like we now know what you need to have at like your Christmas gathering.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that would be so great. I remember when my mom used to get out like the crystal punch bowl and, when she would host ladies from the church or a baby shower.
Yeah.
All the things. Like she'd get out all the stuff.
Yeah. My aunt had a ton of punch bowls. Anyway. And
my gosh.
Where I grew up a little different. And so in my boyfriend's house in high school, they had like a Zephyr Hills water distributor. You know, the little tank where you just go fill up your water.
Yeah.
But it was full of sangria all the time.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
I know. So that's a more modern version.
I definitely could not have that in my house. That would not be a good thing.
I was 16. I thought it was the best thing ever.
I'm sure you did. Who needs to use
We
a
do
fake
not
ID?
condone that.
No, we
Bad
do
idea,
not.
guys.
Bad idea.
If you have it in your house, please don't make it accessible to your children.
That's right. Just call us.
Right.
Well, so speaking of punch bowls.
Punch bowls.
We talk a lot on The Sinner and the Saint about boundaries.
We love boundaries.
We do love boundaries. God loved boundaries. Jesus loved boundaries. I was in Romans 12, verse 6 through 10. And it was just talking about the things that we should and shouldn't do, kind of giving us some advice, actually, on boundaries. And it was talking about, overall, loving from the center of who you are.
Oh, gosh.
Not faking it. I mean, sometimes this is hard, right? But I think what I started to glean from this is if we are staying in our own punch bowl, staying in our lane, and recognizing that God has created each of us with specific gifts and talents. Like we can't be good at everything. And we can't do it all, thank goodness.
Right?
Oh my gosh. I'm
not
so
enough
glad.
hours, not enough all the things.
Yeah. I mean, I can say no. Like, that's just not my giftedness. I mean, it's exhausting, right? But how many times do we step outside of our giftedness and step into somebody else's punch bowl? Like, we take a bath in it, and then we walk away, like, leaving them wondering, like, what the heck was that about? We love, we want to love people from the center of who we are. And if we are acting outside of our giftedness, we can't do that. One, because first of all, obviously it's not your giftedness, right? Two, it's a little selfish, and it's hard to love people from the center of who you are if you're being selfish and you're acting like you can do everything.
Right.
But also, if you're doing all the things outside of what you're really called to do, you're exhausted, tired, and frustrated.
Yeah, we're exhausted, tired, and frustrated even when we are in our giftedness.
And it's hard to love people from the center of who you are and not fake it when you're exhausted, tired, and frustrated.
So
Facts.
I was going to say, sometimes we don't choose to act outside of our giftedness. We're not aware. We're invited.
Right.
And so I had a really hard time, especially when I first started in ministry, because I can do a lot of things because I've learned to adapt in situations to make myself valuable, because I never felt like I was valuable just as a person. I felt like what I could do is valuable.
Yeah.
And so I became really good at learning something and making it happen. Like, if you want that to happen, you want it to go from A to Z, get Melissa. And so that became what I considered my giftedness. It was not. And so then people invite you in, and I wanted to do it because I wanted to be a part of something.
Right.
So it was when I started to look at the motives as to why I was choosing to say yes, and my intentions, what hole or what void was I trying to fill, what was I looking for, that's when I could really start to shave off the things that were not for me.
It is so important. I mean, all of that, right? Recognizing what our giftedness actually is. Mm-hmm. And then if we're doing things outside of that, what are those motivations? Kind of like what we talked about last week. It's going back and looking at sitting with the Lord and really examining and testing out those motives and why we're doing things. You know, you're right. Sometimes we walk over to somebody else's punch bowl and we just swirl our fingers around in it and wash our hands and walk away, right? But other times people come over and pour their punch bowls on us. So that, you know, it's like one thing for us to have the self-control for our own boundaries. And, you know, like this scripture is so beautiful. It says, if you preach, just preach God's message, nothing else. If you help, just help. Don't take over. If you teach, stick to your teaching. If you give encouraging guidance, be careful that you don't get bossy. Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel like I might need help with that.
Me too.
If you're put in charge, don't manipulate. If you're called to give aid to people in distress, keep your eyes open and be quick to respond. If you work with the disadvantaged, don't let yourself get irritated with them or depressed by them. Keep a smile on your face. And so within that giftedness, there are boundaries. Mm-hmm. And so we have a little bit more control over that. I'm not saying it's easy.
Right.
But we do have more control over that. But what do we do when we're trying to do our things?
Right. We know what they are.
And we're trying to swim in our own punch bowl.
Yeah.
But somebody brings theirs over and throws it on us. What do we do then?
Can you give me a real life example, not punch bowls?
Oh, well, I just mean somebody else is supposed to be, you know, leading something.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know. And then, but they can't manage it or don't want to do it. And so they just are like, here, handle this for me.
Right. So they delegated. And you didn't ask.
Mm-hmm, maybe.
So, well, my good friend Allison, years ago, I heard her speak before we were friends. And she said, what I say is, normally I would, but this time I can't. Mm-hmm. That's a good one. Mm-hmm. That's one of my favorites.
And I recently got a card from a friend who remembers me saying that, and it says, no is a complete sentence.
Yes.
That's all we need to say.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, I guess if someone was coming to you, I would look for their intentions first of all, because someone authentically might be looking to you for your guidance and leadership, at which point you don't get bossy, right? And so then you can just kind of, hey, I have 20 minutes. We can chat on the phone and I can try to help redirect you. Mm-hmm. And try not to take over, right? Because sometimes it's easier if you've been there, done that, to just go, here, just give it to me.
So much easier.
I'll take, let me do that for you. But we don't raise the next generation that way. And people don't get to hone their gifts if we're always filling in the blank for them. And so I think sometimes when you're in the shoes that you're in, where you've been in ministry for a very long time, or, you just have a lot of resources and you've studied a lot, people are going to come to you just because of who you are and, what you've done in life.
Yeah. And I think that is like that is certainly when you're an encourager and a teacher, there's certain expectations, right? And that's when it comes, you want people to come to you, not necessarily throw the punch bowl on you, but most people don't throw their punch bowl.
Right.
It'd
be heavy.
Or or force you into that. I think what happens is we have the capability to manage that situation, right? Because we can, if someone does come to us, we have the ability as people, if we choose to put the boundaries back in place, to clean up the mess a little bit, to reset the expectation, because we can't change people.
Right.
Right? We can't change their situation. We can't change a situation. But we never want to feel backed into a corner or trapped in a situation because because you haven't spoken up, because you haven't been authentic and stayed in your lane. Then you feel trapped. And then that makes it really hard to love people and not fake it from the center of who you are. I think what happens then, a lot of times when we get stuck in situations that we don't feel as if we can get out of, we resort back to old patterns and behaviors to motivate us again.
Yeah.
And, so what are your old patterns? Like for me, if I get stuck in a situation, I resort to guilt.
Okay.
I will guilt myself in, you should be doing this because nobody else can. Well, no, that's a lie. You should be doing this because you're a good person and you're a Christian. Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean I can do everything. I guilt myself. Those are my old patterns, guilting and shaming myself into a motivation to move forward instead of authentically expressing myself and saying, basically running from, it says, run for dear life from evil. Hold on for dear life to what is good.
Oh, I love it.
Be good friends who love deeply. Practice playing second fiddle. Well, that's a little bit extra, but evil is shame. Evil is guilt. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Run from that. And so what situation, recognizing, oh my gosh, I'm feeling trapped in this situation. I did not set my boundary. I tried to set my boundary. It did not work. Now I feel trapped. How am I responding to that?
I love that you say that, because as you were speaking, I was writing down unspoken expectations and unspoken boundaries.
Yes.
And sometimes you speak the boundary, but it's not heard in the moment. And so it's a matter of restating your boundaries. And I've had to do this before. Shocker. And it's kind of, I say things similar to, hey, you may not remember this, but in the beginning I mentioned this. And so this doesn't work for me.
That is a great example. Yes. Coming and knowing, but we have to be able to recognize it. That we've said it and that we're starting to feel like it's shifting in a different direction than where we originally intended. Because once it's gone so far down the road,
right,
there's no place else. So it's being in tune with that all along the way from beginning to end, and not just letting yourself, fine.
Right. Okay,
right?
I'll do it.
Oh, fine.
Because sometimes you're just tired. You don't want to argue about it. You just will do it so it will go away.
Right.
So I often...
That leads to faking it.
Yeah.
Which we're trying to stay away from, though. But go for it.
So I think sometimes when you come into a situation, if you're coming into a new experience or something new has been thrown onto your plate, it's a matter of you sitting down right in there and saying the things I want to do and the things I will not do and making a list. Mm-hmm. So my husband changed jobs about a year ago. And as he was leaving the last job, I said, write down all the things about that job you don't want. Write down all the things about this job that you're excited about. because those are things you're going to have to hold on to.
Oh, that's good.
So, just a thought.
It is great thought. And I think, as we move forward, let's talk about how hard it is, especially I think as women sometimes, because we do want people to like us. We want to, people to value us and all of those things. So how hard was it for you to go back to that individual and say, hey, remember back when I said this?
Right.
That still hasn't changed. Talk about how sometimes there's fear in that. There's an insecurity in going to that. You feel like there's not another option. There are all these things that can stop us and hinder us from circling back with that.
So I think it's important to pray first and to make sure your heart's in the right place before you have that conversation. Mm-hmm. And you need to be confident in your response, because any amount of wavering leaves a little space for them to sneak back in.
Exactly. And they will. It's like blood in the water with sharks. They can smell it miles away.
That's right. Kind of like this is sidebar, but I used to go to the PTA when I have all the kids and they were in school. I was like, how much money do I have to write to you so you never call me for anything? I'm not going to come host a book table. I'm not going to decorate a door. What do you need from me? And I was dead serious. Like, I don't have the bandwidth.
Right.
And so I was like, oh, no. I wrote that check.
And isn't it easier? It's interesting you say that. It is so much easier to set boundaries, I think, for me. Maybe I shouldn't say it's so much. For me, it is so much easier to set boundaries with people that I don't know.
Yes.
Than people that I am close to.
Yep.
Because I'm like, yeah, I really don't care if you think I'm a bad mom for writing you a check instead of volunteering for your book table, right? I just don't care. But if it was some close friends of yours that were running the committee, or whatever, just switching the situation. I'm using your PTA situation. It can make it a lot more challenging the closer you are to the people, to keep those boundaries in place.
Well, and I can also say I'm in a situation right now where we are like members of a play group. We don't get there often because Mondays are hard right now, and I have some things going on with my health, and the most important thing that I can do is rest. And so I was just really upfront, and sometimes being upfront and assertive in the beginning is hard, but if you hit it, in the head, right when it's happening,
right,
then there's no question. And if there is questions, that's their question, not your question.
Such a good point.
And then someone came up to me last night and said, hey, are you ever coming back? And I said, I don't know. I'm having these things going on, and my most important thing is my health. And she wasn't saying it to condemn me, but of course, if I was not in a great headspace, I would think, oh my gosh, they just think I'm a quitter, or they don't like me, or
they're mad at me, or right, exactly.
Yeah. And so people, I think, just,
So I think the bottom line to all this is boundaries are good. We are taught boundaries in the Bible.
Yep.
But we must be confident in what our boundaries are, have identified our giftedness, because when you are certain, it is so much easier to keep your boundary in place. It's my little dog. She knows where the electric fence is. She knows exactly how far she can go without setting off the little ringy dingy before it shocks her. She knows the boundary. We have to know what those are. We've got to know the parameters, and we've got to be confident in that. If we just it's a surprise and we didn't put the flags up when we first set it up, and we just stuck her out in the yard and she had to figure it out without a visual, that would have been awful torture. We don't want to go out into life like that. And so sitting with the Lord, finding clarity in that, with God, with your people, and some of it's just life experience.
Yeah, but I'll also say she will run right up to that boundary, though.
Yes.
She's going to butt up against it. And so when you do set boundaries, people are naturally going to see if you're going to hold them.
That's right. They will. And you must keep the electric fence up.
As with every part of life, we all have patterns. And so I have friends like you, my friend Stephanie, and you all know what my pitfalls are. And so you've spoken them to me in love. And so number one, making sure those people are aware of the things that you're thinking about putting on your plate. And also writing down your pitfalls so you're aware. Because this person that might be asking you to do something is not aware that that's your thing, right? They're not probably poorly intentioned trying to take advantage of you.
Right.
It's just like happens to be aligning that way.
I mean, yeah, it's on us. We're the ones. No one can set a healthy boundary for you. No one can force you to keep it. That's on us. So just like Romans says, I mean, if you preach, just preach God's message, nothing else. If you help, awesome. Just don't take over. If you teach, stick to your teaching. If you give encouraging guidance, be careful that you don't get bossy. If you're put in charge, don't manipulate. If you're called to give aid to other people, keep your eyes open and be quick to respond. And don't get disappointed and depressed if you're helping the disadvantaged. But love from the center of who you are. And it certainly helps to be clear in what those boundaries are and finding the confidence and the security to stick with them.
That's right.
Thanks for joining us this week on The Center and the Saint.